There's been some great success this Carnival 2024 as the Carnival season came to a close, and a lot also happened as well. So joining us in studio is the Honourable Fitzgerald Hinds, Minister of National Security, to share some updates and, of course, have some great conversation. Good morning, Minister.
A very good morning to you, Natasha and Raucus and all your viewers and listeners around the globe. Pleasure is mine to be in your company again.
It's wonderful to see you again. How are you doing this morning?
I'm excellent, good at a personal level. As Minister of National Security, in that public office, I feel quite good. I feel quite pleased with the people of Trinidad and Tobago, who, from all the reports now available to me, conducted ourselves in the anticipated civil, sociable manner. We had a great carnival, great successes from the artists and the steel bands and all of that. And the reports are that it was very largely free of the kind of violence that is possible and we see in large crowds whenever they are gathered anywhere else in the world. So I'm proud of Trinidad and Tobago. In this regard, I'm proud of the police service, which would have had to impose law and order on some of the more extreme elements who have greater potential for behaving differently. And I think altogether it worked very well. So for those reasons, I'm quite pleased this morning and proud of my country.
Excellent to hear that, and of course for us as citizens it's wonderful to know that we had a safe carnival.
Yes.
And let's talk a little bit about that, because of course there would have been a lot of strategy that went into place.
Yes.
We were talking earlier about the fact that, you know, artists, they start from 2023, so we can only imagine what the safety plan is like. Yes. For the Ministry of National Security. Yes. So what would you say ultimately was the main thing that made this year successful?
Well, we kind of separated the thing into two main areas: those who participate in Carnival in the busy and known carnival centers, Port of Spain, San Fernando, Arima, and all the other districts around the country. So we focused and we put a lot of presence in there. And of course, we looked at the non-carnival venues where people go, for example, to camps, the church groups and all of that. So the police service has 10 divisions across Trinidad and Tobago. So we beefed up their strength, because usually police officers are called out in larger numbers at Carnival time for obvious reasons. And we got significant numbers from the Defense Force to buttress that, to support that. So in every division of Trinidad and Tobago, we had good, strong presence. As you would have seen, we made vehicles, more vehicles available to them just before Carnival. So they were mobile, they were agile, they were able to respond. And the police had a campaign before Carnival giving safety tips and even advising people, if you are leaving your home to go to Carnival in Port of Spain or so, you can report that fact to the local police and we will pay attention to your home. So there was a whole program and a number of things. But after all, we have been policing Carnival for over 100 years, close to 185 years. So we are very adept and experienced at it. And the police had their goal commander, ACP Thompson, supported by ACP Maraj, assistant commissioners both. And I watched them personally. I spent some of the time with them on Carnival Tuesday, much time with them in the run-up to Carnival, as the plans were laid out. And I must say I was very happy with the police activity, and it all came together for the good. So we did it far and wide, and we just created this environment supported by the TTDF and the fire service, because they play a role in public safety and so on. One of the things we did before Carnival was to engage the FET promoters, because at these FETs you now have thousands of people and there are potential risks. So we engaged them. They had some complaints and concerns about extra duty issues with the fire service and the police service. We resolved that. We had some issues about the numbers. There are promoters who would say that they're anticipating 7,000 people and they would get 17,000 people.
My goodness.
So we both identified the challenges that we had. We settled even with a memorandum of understanding, a signed agreement, and we adhered to that. So you would have heard no issues coming out of the FET venues, because if they indicated that they're catering for 7,000, then we knew how many fire officers and police officers would be there, and then we had a system of counting the 7,000. So once we got to that, the promoter knew where we were. So a number of things went into it, and we were quite happy about all of that. So I am quite satisfied that we have done it in the past, we can do it, and we did it. I observed myself. 5:30 Carnival Tuesday evening, I'm going down Frederick Street, and your city was impeccably clean. Did you observe?
I did observe that as well.
And I saw where, not for the first time, a number of CPEP teams would have been brought into the city, focused on it, and cleaning as we went along. I passed through the city this morning again, and yesterday, the place impeccably cleaned, showing that we have the capacity to do the thing right. And the only question I would ask now is, why don't we do that all through the year? Why can't we be carnivalesque all through the year in that regard, in terms of policing, in terms of the cleansing and the cleaning and so on? So we have the capability, and I'm a happy man for that.
Agreed. And definitely, as well, as you mentioned, that being, having that carnivalesque mentality throughout the year, because we see all the unity, we see all the love, and we've definitely seen that safety aspect come out of this carnival as well. So hats off to all of these services who took part. Wonderful that everybody felt safe, and knowing that this is a trend we're going to see continue throughout every carnival to come. Now, you mentioned the cleaning, and one of the things, of course, on everybody's mind is the oil spill in Tobago. I know there would have been a press release yesterday from the Ministry of National Security. Can you share with us a little bit about that, Minister?
Well, from the get-go, the vessel was discovered the Wednesday before Carnival, last Wednesday, jacked up on a reef there. So certain risks are involved. We don't know what the vessel had on board. We knew nothing of it. So the investigation started. I can tell you that today, based on the release I would have issued yesterday, we are in a far better position in terms of understanding what happened, how it happened, an idea as to when it happened. These things are being investigated. What is on board? We've had the Coast Guard involved from day one. The Chief Secretary, I heard him say, and this is in respect of the Coast Guard, that they exceeded his expectations. While he was saying that, we had a commentator representing some business institution in Tobago, a former journalist called Curtis Williams, saying something completely different. So the situation is not devoid of the potential for bacchanal and small talk. But the bottom line is, we collaborating with our local agencies, the Maritime Services Division, the Ministry of Energy, which has a role in this because you're talking about oil spill.
Of course.
The Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard, the ODPM, all of the local, the TEMA in Tobago, all of these agencies are doing what we have to do, and so far I might tell you doing it sufficiently well. We have also collaborated with CARICOM Impacts, a regional security establishment, and they would have been putting us in touch with other governments. So we are relating to international partners. We have had, as you heard the Prime Minister say, offers of help from a couple nations. I'm aware that the Brazilians offered us some help in the event that we needed. I'm aware that help has been offered, and we are dealing with it. The investigations are continuing. So in that press release, I'm asking the society to confine itself to official, serious information. Investigations are underway. We are trying to trace the origins of the vehicle, the owners of the vehicle, the vessel, and these things are coming together very nicely. And as soon as we come to conclusions on them, we continue to share information, and most of all, understand what risks are involved with that vessel, and to take action to ameliorate those risks. So the matter is so far well under control and being managed in a sensible and professional manner.
Which, of course, is key to management. Which is key to management with something like this. So it's good to see that collaboration between regional and international bodies as well, that we have that relationship. So, of course, we're going to be continuing to cover it here, and we know that we're going to see releases coming out from the government as well as more news rolls in and we get the facts, which is so important. Now, as we mentioned, regional and international collaboration, one of the things that we saw recently as well was the arrest of a human trafficker.
Yes.
Something that everybody has been talking about, and it's not an issue that is far from many people's minds in our country. What would you say is coming out of this particularly? I mean, we know the arrest happened, but this is now going to set the trend for clamping down on human trafficking.
Indeed. Let me, by way of background, say that human trafficking is a burgeoning and serious crime, transnational in nature. It's about trafficking from one space, one country to the next, and it can happen locally too.
Yes.
In that particular matter, this involved a 16-year-old at the time Trinidadian in Trinidad by a Trinidadian. So trafficking can take place in our domain as well. But those are the things that made that one unique. And of course, he was charged by the police for several offenses. The matter made its way to the High Court. You start in the Magistrates Court with the then preliminary inquiry. Well, we have just abolished that from December the 12th. And the matter was, he was committed to stand trial in the High Court. When that came, he appeared on the first 2 days. And when he must have seen a little water more than flour, he absconded. But the laws allowed the judge, Mr. Justice Henderson, of international court experience and knowledge, and the rules allowed him to continue the trial in the absence of the accused, Anthony Michael Smith. And the trial went on, and he was found guilty by the jury, and the court sentenced him to 15 years imprisonment. But of course, he was by then nowhere to be found. And I remember having to take great pains to try to explain to the national community, well, that is not the first time that would have happened. Right. Unfortunately, we are assessed by our international partners in this subset, in this human trafficking criminal activity. So it didn't augur very well for us. But I knew that a warrant was issued for his arrest, which is part of the court's process. And I knew that he would be found. And so we began our searches, the police that is, locally, regionally, because we did have they had certain bits of information, and internationally. Turns out that he was hiding here, and in an intelligence-led operation, I think it was Saturday, Carnival Saturday, the police went and they located Anthony Michael Smith, and they arrested him, brought him into custody, of course, and I think by now he would have begun serving his 15-year term, meeting the justice of the case. And the young lady, the victim of his crime, now no longer 16, obviously, she came to Trinidad and Tobago. We brought her here in our justice protection program quite safely. She was able to give evidence in accordance with all of the rules and so on. She was quite happy with all of this. She was protected. She gave evidence, and then she returned from when she came. So all worked so beautifully well. And now we are able to say to those who assess us that we have been prosecuting people. We prosecuted him. We convicted him, our first conviction, and he is now serving a term of imprisonment. Since then, I might tell you, we have arrested and charged about 12 other people for human trafficking offenses, and those matters are making their way through the courts. I must commend the courts on this occasion, because under Attorney General, as he then was, Al-Rawi, we rearranged the structure of the High Court and created different divisions. We now have a criminal division of the High Court, which allows, and the Chief Justice, in support of the state's efforts, announced last year that they had set up a special court to deal with victims of sexual offenses and human trafficking. And in that process, these matters can be fast-tracked. And therefore, we expect to see more of that in the protection of our women and children, and in the protection of the victims, the potential victims of human trafficking. We have improved the entire situation. We have just hired a new director of the human trafficking, the counter-trafficking unit, and the deputy director, both with prosecutorial backgrounds, and they are very enthused about it. And that subset of crime known as human trafficking is getting intense and increased focus by this country as we go forward. I am very happy about that as well.
That's something critical. So it's good to hear that this is being focused on, particularly, especially with the fast tracking, because you do hear many, mention the fact that they feel as though the process does take too long. And hearing now also that there was the opportunity, the victim came back to Trinidad in order to deal with that, also demonstrates, please correct me if I'm wrong, that they felt that level of safety.
Yes, indeed. You're quite right. And that is good for us, because one of the things that deter people from even seeking justice for themselves is this question of fear. Criminals thrive on fear. It's a serious psychological condition. It immobilizes you, it freezes you, and it affects even those who are not directly involved in the business. So the state has a duty to stand in the gap, do what we have to do, put in place the necessary laws, improve the criminal justice system so that they will meet their day swiftly in court and be sent to do the time that they are scheduled to do. And while in the prison, we also have the task of managing them, because, you have issues inside of there. So it's an ongoing business. We are familiar with the issues, and we are responding to them in the way that this society deserves.
We've had a lot of talk about society. Let's talk about community involvement when it comes to national security. Where do you see that right now, Minister?
Well, in all of the matters I have discussed with you this morning, this is for the public. It is about the national community. And they help. Without their help, we can't. I just read on the paper that Jamaica, during the 40 days of Lent, has published a 40-day where they want to capture 40 people. Known, one per day, known by the police and wanted by the Jamaican police. So they are using in that technique during the month of Lent, and I hear you talking to the Rockers about what you'll give up. They want the public to give up these criminals who have been hiding among them. So the public does have a critical role to play. This is why trust and confidence in the police, the main agency responsible for dealing with crime, is so critical. This is why, I'm proud of the police who came out, notwithstanding the vague threats by some voices purportedly speaking on behalf of the police. The police came out in large numbers, and they offered you, the society, the protection you needed. The public help is always very important, and we are taking action. You will notice that the Prime Minister announced only recently that the state, the government, is allocating $100 million to be spent not on physiological improvement, not on drains and roads. We're spending on that, but on making communities more resilient to crime and crime patterns and participating in crimes. We have identified that there are a lot of our youngsters who would not, like you, have had the benefit of sound parenting, nurtured in a proper family where civility and social well-being were priorities. They're devoid of that. So the state is now intervening. We'll allocate $100 million so that we will use that in different programs targeted at our young people who would have missed out on that, to make them more resilient, to make them be stronger, to make them able to say, no, I'm not holding no gun for you. No, I'm not driving no victim of your crime. I'm not going to do no robbery with you. And to support the communities in this regard. So we understand how important families are, the communities are, and we are focused on that. So this $100 million program is going to be in addition to all the other youth development programs that we already have in place. And for those reasons, I'm optimistic that we are heading in the right direction. We're getting better.
Optimism is key. So, Minister, we've discussed the success of Carnival 2024. We've discussed the oil spill, human trafficking. You've just shared with us this recent investment and the returns that we will see in the future. Are there any other things that the ministry is focusing on specifically that you would like to share with the community?
Well, yes, indeed. Several things. This business of managing crime and criminality, as you know, is a very complex business. Crime is the manifestation of the sinful nature of the human being, and we are all prone to sin.
Yes.
Some sins we call crimes. In fact, all crimes are sins, but not all sins are crimes. And of course, to deal with the human being is a very difficult thing, especially when sometimes parents work so hard, bring up their children in the right way, and then you see strange behaviors. They're influenced somehow or somewhere else. You see people who are engaged in law enforcement. Many years ago, I saw 3 DEA operatives from the U.S. going to South America to deal with the crime of trafficking narcotics, and they ended up being charged by the U.S. authorities for trading in narcotics.
My goodness.
That's how complex it is. We've seen in this world presidents encourage breaking the law. You've seen people so it's a complex human thing at all human levels, and therefore the business of dealing with it is complex. So it's multifaceted. One of the things we focus on in terms of our existence as a twin island state is our border security. And you would have seen we are taking serious action, making serious investments to improve the cordon around Trinidad and Tobago, because our geographical condition leaves us very vulnerable to the importation of arms and ammunition and dangerous drugs, which when they become accessible to our youngsters, some of them not as solid and mindful as they should be, we wind up with problems. So our border security, to answer your question, is a major item, and the Prime Minister and the Cabinet, we are really pursuing that. You would have seen us buy 2 new Cape Coast vessels in 2021. You would have seen us issue a contract just before Christmas to repair about 12 vessels that we had that had grown into a state of disrepair. You might have heard the Prime Minister speaking to the international partners, looking for their support one way or the next in getting more vessels, because we think we need more to put a harder cordon around Trinidad and Tobago. We are also focused on our youth. We have set up a specialized youth ministry, the Ministry of Youth Development and National Service, where we spend money, a lot of professionalism, and a lot of time creating pathways for young people, even making land and agricultural skills and all of those things, in addition to the formal existing education structure, early childhood, secondary, university level, which we all benefited from. So these are the kinds of main issues for us in this whole of government, whole of society approach that we are taking to responding to this situation. Crime is not unique to Trinidad and Tobago, and nothing is new under the sun. When I look at headlines from TTT, Express, Guardian, Newsday, 15 years ago, they very much resemble the headlines I see now. So we are on the job, doing the business. And I thank you very much for your very good question. It allowed me an opportunity to give a little insight into the complexity of this and to let you know we are on the job dealing with it.
Thank you so much, Minister, for sharing with us this morning and being here. Hoping that you have a wonderful day, and all the best as 2024 continues.
I thank you very, very much, and may you continue to be blessed and continue your good professional work as a journalist, along with your brother Rokas. Thank you very much as well. All the best.
It's been a pleasure. The Honourable Fitzgerald Hinds, Minister of National Security, sharing with us some updates this morning. This is your place to be. It's the Now Morning Show. Stay tuned. There's more coming up right after this break.